Hello everybody, Marc Antomattei here for Gentlemen's Club Whiskey. I am your host, and this is something that I've been meaning to do for the absolute longest. This is my new book, 50 Japanese Whiskies Tasted in Japan, and I released this book in the summer of 2020, and I would like to show this book to you page by page today. This is the ultra premium version of this book. This one cost about $39.99 US dollars, and I have some other ones that I would like to show you real quick. This one right here is another hardcover, and it is a little bit cheaper than the one that you just looked at. This one is about $35.99, so it's only $4 cheaper, but there is a big difference, and I would highly recommend you get the very premium version. And finally, we have the most abundant version, which is the paperback edition. And this one is all around very nice. And if you're on a tight budget, I would recommend you get this. And even yet again, if you're on an even tighter budget, I also have this in ebook format. And the layout is exactly the same in ebook as it is in hardcover and print form, because the ebook version is fixed, so to speak. So it has the same images, same layout, and everything. It's not one of these things where you could scale the text along those lines or anything like that. So before we go ahead and get started, let me tell you the remainder of the prices of these books. So I said that this premium one is $39.99. This one is $35.99. The paperback is $25.99, and the ebook is $19.99. So it depends on your budget which one you should get. But if you're a hardcore whiskey collector, and especially of Japanese whiskey, you need to get this premium version. And this will be the one that we're going to look at today. So let's just go ahead and move these other ones to the side. When you take a look at the spine, you can see that the colors are very nice and sharp and tacked and things of that nature. And on the back cover, I have a quote from Mr. Donald Payne from Whisky Watches on Instagram. He says, "Are you a fan of whiskey? More specifically, are you a fan of Japanese whiskey? If you answered yes to either one of these questions, then you are in for a treat. Join Marc Antomattei as he takes you on a journey exploring 50 Japanese whiskeys." As a fan of Japanese whiskey, I was very excited to get my hands on Marc's book. Marc isn't just telling a story, he is sharing his experience as one who has actually tasted these 50 wonderful whiskeys. As it has been told, experience is the best teacher. The book is well thought out, and the layout makes it very easy to read and reference. So if you're ready to experience one of the most comprehensive Japanese whiskey books available, this treasure chest of knowledge is one that I am sure you'll enjoy. Donald Payne, author, writer, producer, whiskey collector. So, right before I open this up, I almost forgot. So I said I would tell you the difference between both of these hardcover books, and I'm going to tell you on where to get both of these books, by the way. So the non-premium hardcover book, when you open it up, you could see that the pages are matte. They have a very nice soft feel to them, and they still look extremely good. The whole book looks extremely good and it looks and feels good no matter what edition you get. But this one has matte paper. Whereas, if you open up the premium edition, let me make sure that I keep it on the right page here. So opening up the premium edition now, you could see that the paper is gloss with a coated finish. And that just makes the images pop that much more. But it doesn't matter which one you get. They both look great. You'll be satisfied with either one of them. But if you're a hardcore collector, you need to go ahead and pay the extra $4 and get this edition with the coated gloss paper. Looks very good and sharp. And let's flip through this one real quick. I should actually be flipping through the matte paper edition, as there's not going to be any reflection showing up on camera, but I'm not going to do that today. So you can buy the matte cover one. Well, they're both matte cover, but the matte page edition, you can buy the matte page edition off of Amazon for $35.99. And I have a special link inside of the description that's going to take you to lulu.com, where you could go ahead and get this one with the gloss pages for $39.99. But that's a very special link that you have to click on, and you must buy it from that website if you want this book. So now let's open it up and let's take a look at everything page by page. 50 Japanese Whiskies tasted in Japan. And here's the second title page that has my imprint, Marc Antomattei Press, on it. The copyright page, and as listed, I have the ISBNs registered for all editions of the book, the hardcover, paperback, and ebook. And at some point in time, I'll try to make a audiobook of this when I have time to actually sit down and record it. Copyright is from 2020. As I said earlier, I put this out in the summer of that year. This book is wholly designed and written by myself, and a majority of the photography is done by me, with the exception of a few photos from the Chichibu Distillery, Suntory Chita Distillery, and the Nika, Miyagikyo, and Yoichi Distilleries, and the Kavalan Distillery. Those were all courtesy of their respective copyright owners had given those to me. All in all, I think there is 96 unique images inside of this book of full-page photographs. And like I said, a majority of them are mine, with the exception of, let's count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. With the exception of 7 of those are not mine. Table of contents. I have all the whiskeys listed out here. These are the first 28. You flip the page. These are the remaining, all the way up to 50. Then I feature all of the distilleries that I wrote about and visited, all of the bars that I had visited and then wrote about. This is intra-Japan nationwide. Reviews of all the books out now on Japanese whiskey. And then here I have an honorary mention section because, let's see, I feature Kavalan Classic Single Malt Whiskey, King Car Kavalan Distillery, and I feature 2 bars here. Now, the reason these things are inside of this honorary section is because, as you know, Kavalan is a whiskey from Taiwan, and the distillery is in Taiwan. But being the only other whiskey distillery and whiskey maker in East Asia, aside from Japan, I give them an honorary mention. And this bar, Backyard, even though it's in Tokyo, this bar, they do not serve any Japanese whiskey at this bar, but they do serve some Scotch whiskeys and some bourbons here. But no Japanese whiskeys, even though it's a bar in Japan. So that gets an honorary mention in the back. And the Brandy Library in New York City. This is probably the best whiskey bar that I've ever been to in my life. And you can buy Japanese whiskey here, but seeing for the fact that it's not located in Japan, that it's outside of Japan, I listed it in the honorary mention section. The closing sections of the book, I have a bibliography, an about author section, and I have an epilogue. This is the first photograph that you're going to see inside of the book. This is Yumi Yoshikawa. She's the brand ambassador from Chichibu Distillery. And in fact, she had sent me some photos of the Chichibu Distillery that I could use inside of this book with the distillery's permission. So as a thank you to her, I show her picture in the front, and I have a dedication section. So this top dedication is to all my friends and people that have helped me and encouraged me on my endeavors and things like that. And below here it says, for their assistance, a special thanks to Taro Kaneko, Deputy Manager and Brand Ambassador for Asahi Breweries. If you know, Asahi Breweries is the owner of Nika. And Yumi, which we already talked about. Caitlin Tsai, the Brand Ambassador and Global PR Officer for Cavalon. She had sent me the images for the Cavalon Whiskey and for the distillery. And Yusuke Sasaki, Global Public Relations Department for Suntory Holdings Limited. And he's the one that gave me permission and sent me the images to use of the Chita Distillery, which is not open to the public. Here I wrote my whiskey tasting notes from handwritten to print to digital. When I first started taking notes for my book, I had handwritten all of my whiskey tasting notes inside of this very small notebook, which is a little bit smaller than this book here. And behind that, this is all of my printed and typed notes. And then I put everything to digital so that I can look at it on the iPad. So 3 different versions. And this is my preface to this book here. I may or may not read this now. Let me see how long this is going to be, so I know how long this is expected to take me. All right. Before we get into anything, let me first say this is the most essential notice I can give to readers of my book. Don't let me make any determinations for you. This book may or may not influence your whiskey purchasing decisions, but everything here in these pages are my assessments according to my own personal tastes and likings. You may agree with me on everything, or you may agree with me on 80 to 90% of my tastings. You may only agree with half of them, or quite possibly, you may love absolutely everything I hate and hate everything I love. That's okay with me. These suggestions I will make in these reviews may not suit everyone's palate. We all grow up in different regions of the world, and we are subjected to different taste palettes and diets. I'm from the United States, the land of the fat and the home of the sweet. We don't, as a collective whole, even eat half as healthy as Japanese people do. While I have lived in Japan for the past 17 years and have become accustomed to their food, I like my own country's food offerings better. I appreciate the healthy, natural, and organic makeup of Japanese cuisine. Still, taste-wise, it's not the end-all be-all for food. Not to say I don't like Japanese food. Again, I just like my food more. Trying to keep this short now, buy what you want. I may mention in this book some tasting notes along the lines of, this whiskey is a little too spicy or peaty for my liking. Just for example, although I do like peat and spice. Depending on how much I express after that, I may be stressing with emphasis that I dislike it a lot, or maybe just a little. Either way, I'm showing that I have at least some disdain for it. Now, you may personally like spice, you may like peat. You know yourself and you read into that, and you take that with a grain of salt, because that may be your cue to say to yourself, okay, I need to go out and buy this whiskey immediately. So that's how that works. Just don't hate me because I love differently from you. More about this book. Even though this is a review book, an index, a data bank, and a reference book, I wanted to make a real book that you can read cover to cover and find interesting stories in, along with facts included to hold your interest. Just the typical whiskey specifications with bullet points would not do. I hope that as a reader, this is something you can truly appreciate, as I poured much effort, no pun intended, research and money into. Every whiskey featured in this book is one I drank personally, with me actually buying bottles and drinking at a bar to an equal extent. Hopefully, the secret that'll keep you reading all the way through is that every whiskey has a story. The scale of these stories may vary. Some might be grand, others minor. They'll either be stories about events I experienced personally with the whiskey, or a story about a particular whiskey, maybe involving its history. There have been 4 major book releases on the subject matter of Japanese whiskey, and for the most part, they are all hitting the same beats, but with different wording. A history of Japanese whiskey, how Japanese whiskey is made, a look at whiskey cocktails, a showcase of all the major distilleries, short reviews, etc. The word for this would be double dipping. What warrants one to write a book if they can't do it either different or better than the last guy? I congratulate Dominic Rosgrove for being the first. What sets my book apart from the handful of others who have written on the topic? Well, I'm here boots on the ground buying and trying this stuff on my own dime. It's one thing to write about Japanese whiskey, get photos sourced from the distillers, collect someone else's reviews, and collage together a book. It is another thing to actually drink and experience everything that you write about for yourself. I've been to these distilleries and bars. I've had everything I wrote about. I've got the receipts and the photographic evidence to back me up. I'm the sole visionary of my book, and I'm giving you the Steve Jobs experience of what I think a whiskey book should be. I'm focused on the consumer experience, showcasing the drinks that you are interested in buying. Even if you never knew before about a particular bottle, you may have never known you wanted it. However, after reading an entry on it in my book, it'll entice you to go out and get it. I'm showing you what you want even before you know. My book is about whiskey through and through, and putting them front and center. I do humble myself, and I hope you appreciate my efforts and what I'm trying to do. Kanpai. And then I give my signature and my hanko, which is a Japanese stamp of my name in kanji. Marc T. Antomattei, founder. Marc Antomattei Press, author of 50 Japanese Whiskies. So we start off the book here with a glossary right after the preface. These are common terms that you may or may not know. If somebody blindly buys this book and they're wanting to learn about whiskey, but they don't really know much about it, they can learn a great deal from this unique original glossary that I had made. For example, some words inside of here that maybe the ordinary person or drinker, casual drinker may not know. Chill filtration, column stills, dram, Mizunara, let's see, pure malt, sherry. So just a few of the terms inside of my glossary. Let's go ahead and flip to the next page. Just a photo of the Hibiki 30 there. So this is how to use this guide. Usually here, I'm going to write the distillery name first of a whiskey, followed by the name of the whiskey. And then I'm going to write a summary about the whiskey or a story about it. Then down here is going to be my tasting notes, where I give my notes on the nose, the palate, finish, color, ABV, the distillery that it comes from, and the price of how much it costs. And this is the entry number of what whiskey number I'm reviewing inside of the book. So for example, if we take a look at the first whiskey entry, first up here I'm going to have the distillery name and then the name of the whiskey. Chichibu is the name of the distillery, and then the whiskey name is Ichiro's Malt and Grain, World Blended Whiskey Limited Edition. Summary here. Sometimes I might have the date that I've actually drank the whiskey. For example, this one, I drank it on 2018, November 25th. And here are my tasting notes for this one. The nose of this is sweet cereal, maple syrup and vanilla. The palate, light spicy kick, maple and vanilla cream sweetness. The finish is chewable. Alcohol by volume is 48%. and this comes from the Chichibu Distillery. But I was told that it has some old Hanyu Distillery stock was used in the first few batches of this. The price of this one is approximately 20,000 Japanese yen online in Japan for a 700 milliliter size bottle. So now I'm just going to be quiet real quick, and I'm just going to flip through the first 50 entries of all the whiskeys. You guys can pause it and just take a look at whatever you want. So far, all of these images that you see on the left-hand page have all been taken by me, whether in a bar or in my home or outside, where I might sometimes do a photo shoot with a whiskey bottle, which is a little bit strange, like this one. I placed this one in front of like a little pond area on some stones and took it with the background blown out of focus. Here's another one that I took outside, facing Tokyo Bay. This one in the same area, also in front of Tokyo Bay. This is one of my favorite images, very beautiful. I took this one outside on some stones in front of a very nice apartment complex. Same for this one. This is a new whiskey that was released on May 20th, 2020. Just as I was finishing up this book, I was able to catch this whiskey and put a review of it inside of my book. So I'm probably the first one to have reviewed that, as I reviewed it the week that it came out, essentially. You could see I touch quite a few distilleries here. This is from the Mars Shinsu Distillery, and another one from the Mars Shinsu Distillery. Even I touch on ones that are not so well known. These two are budget whiskeys that are quite affordable for anybody and can be easily found. And I have all these things organized in alphabetical order by the distillery and then the whiskey. So now from entry number 25, we are taking a look at only Nika whiskeys. And I have quite a few Nika whiskeys inside of here. So when did those start? On entry number 25, and now we're up to entry number 31. Entry number 33, 34, 35, so that's 10, 11, 12, and that's it. And I think the remaining of them is going to be Suntory, maybe the next 12. Cheetah, this is one that many people inside the United States have yet to try. And I don't think this bottle is sold in the United States. I think I can make a killing if I was to bring back a few of these affordable bottles and were to sell them around the United States. This one only costs about 4,000 yen, which is about $40 US. But seeing as it's not distributed to the United States, if you were to bring it there and sell it from you importing it yourself and distributing it to whoever you want to sell it to, I can easily see you getting somewhere between $100 to $150 per bottle if you decided that you wanted to sell this. And people would pay for it. At least the people I know would pay for it easily. The No Age Statement Hakushu. The No Age Statement Hibiki. This is entry number 40. Hibiki Blender's Choice. I was one of the first to try this when it came out. I had this one on September 11th of 2018. This is the Suntory Kakubin, probably their cheapest whiskey that they sell. And the one that Japanese people like the most. They buy this to make highballs with it. But this is probably the whiskey that I have the most disdain for that I've ever drank. Suntory Royal. Tory's Classic. This is another budget whiskey, very cheap. Only 37% ABV. In Scotland, anything under 40% wouldn't even be considered whiskey. So this does not pass the quality control standards of the world, only in Japan, because it's very lawless right now in Japan. Tory's Extra Honey. This is a whiskey liqueur that is no longer sold, but if you can find it, definitely buy it because it's a beautiful taste. I was one of the first to review the Suntory Owl, and I was able to get this whiskey inside of my book last minute before publishing as well. Suntory Yamazaki Distillery Single Malt Whiskey. This is not the same as the Yamazaki Single Malt whiskey. This one has the distillery name in the title, and it's a very cheap Yamazaki single malt blend. Very affordable as well. The price is only 1,500 yen for this 300 milliliter bottle, but this one can only be purchased at the Yamazaki Distillery. Yamazaki No Age Statement, Yamazaki 12, and Yamazaki 18, and that marks the 50 whiskeys. And I'm already working on the next book, which is called 50 More Japanese Whiskies. Consider this book right here an entry into Japanese whiskey, but once you get into that next book, it's going to be mostly age statement whiskeys and rarities and the really expensive stuff. If you're a collector, that's the one. Well, you got to get this one too, as this is just to whet your appetite, but that's going to be the one that's really going to knock your socks off, that book. So after I review the 50 whiskeys, then I go and talk about the distilleries that I visited. I don't know where this is. I would have to check. I believe this is the Hakushu distillery. So, first distillery that I talk about is the Chichibu. Let's go ahead and go to the next page, the Chita. And like I said, I got these images from the brand ambassador for both of these companies. Yumi Yoshikawa gave me these Chichibu distillery pictures here. And the Chita distillery had given me these 3 pictures to use inside of my book. And I thank them for both. This is the Egashima distillery. Previously, it was called the White Oak Whiskey Distillery. And these are older pictures that I have, but they had taken down this signboard and replaced it with one that says Egashima. They renamed it from White Oak to Egashima right after I released the book. So I'm a little bit sad about that. My pictures are a little bit outdated, but still nice. Fujigo Timba. This is Fujigo Timba is owned by Kirin, and they make the Fuji Sanroku, probably one of their only good whiskeys. The rest of them, I can't say how I feel about them. Indifferent. Hakushu Distillery. This is the Miyagikyo Distillery in Sendai, Miyagi Prefecture. The Yamazaki Distillery. Look at this beautiful picture here. I went through some illegal measures to get this photograph right there. I don't want to talk about what I did, but it was very tough getting that photo, but I'm so proud of it. The Yoichi Distillery, and that's the final one. Next, I talk about all the bars. This is just a picture of a whiskey menu there. First, this is 82L House in Tokyo, in Kinchicho. And this is actually a bar chain, but this is the one that I visit the most. Apollo, which is kind of like a bar restaurant. They have some whiskey on board. Very nice restaurant. They make nice burgers there. If you're ever in Chiba City, Japan, then you definitely have to go there. The Artie's Bar. This place was once in Osaka, and I had written about the Osaka Artie's Bar. And just the same week that I was getting ready to publish this book, Artie himself, the master bartender, had announced that he was opening up the Artie's Bar in Tokyo. So I had to go visit the bar on opening night, and I rewritten everything that I wrote about the Artie's Bar because I wanted to reflect the Tokyo branch and not the Osaka branch, which is now closed. So I had to get the address right and the service charge and everything else. Bar Memphis. This is my favorite bar in Kanto. Yeah, I would say so because of the atmosphere, even if not for the whiskey. But the whiskey is a very nice selection. This guy knows a lot about his whiskeys. He visited Scotland and brought some things back. So not just Japanese whiskey, but just all whiskey in general. He's very knowledgeable, and he has a very curated selection from all over the world. This is my favorite bar in Japan, bar none. No point intended. The name of the bar is called Bar UK Osaka, and this is Eiji-san. He's a gentleman bartender, and he has the best selection and the best prices of Japanese whiskey that you can find anywhere in the country. And his Scotch whiskeys are absolutely amazing as well. I recommend everybody go visit this place. I want to keep this place in business for a long time. Cabin Nakamaguro. This one is in Tokyo. This one is very cozy, and where it wasn't a whiskey bar before, this guy was more like a mixer. He says that he's trying to turn it into a whiskey bar. So he's turned the complete top and second shelf into just whiskey in general. So it has become a whiskey bar as of late. But at the time that I wrote this, I did this write-up on the bar. It wasn't a whiskey bar at that time, but he had a lot of whiskey here. One Shot Bar Keith in Osaka. This one has a lot of whiskeys from... Hold on, I'm looking. He has a lot of whiskeys in general from... I'm trying to skim through this, from Chichibu. And yeah, Chichibu and Akashi. Starbucks Reserve. This used to be the largest Starbucks in Japan. In the world, not in Japan. It's still the largest one in Japan. It used to be the largest Starbucks in the world until they opened up the one in Chicago, which has replaced this. But they have some whiskey infused type teas and some other drinks here that you guys would need to go delve into. 2 whiskey infused drinks that are very delicious and very important if you want a mixed cocktail with whiskey in it. And this is the Tokyo Whiskey Library, which is very similar to the Brandy Library in New York City. If you were to go here, you could tell, or if you have been to both, you could tell that this place has been influenced by there. And that marks the last bar that I have reviewed in my book. So now I'm getting ready to review the other 4 whiskey books out on the subject of Japanese whiskey. This is the first one that I talk about, Japanese Whiskey. After I do my write-up, I mention here who the author was, the publisher, ISBN, what format it is, hardcover, paperback, whatever, and the date that it was released, how many pages, the US price, and the Japan price. The Way of Whiskey, Whiskey Japan, and Whiskey Rising. And here goes that honorable mention section that I was talking about earlier, where I review the Kavalan Classic Single Malt Whiskey, the King Car Kavalan Distillery, Bar Backyard, which is in Tokyo, but they don't have any Japanese whiskey here, as I mentioned before, and the Brandy Library, which has a lot of Japanese whiskey, but being that it's not located in Japan, I stuck it in the honorable mention section. This is my bibliography. How many pages of this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About the author, let me read about myself really quick. Marc Antomattei was born in El Paso, Texas, on January 4th, 1983. Marc is the youngest of 4 brothers. His Puerto Rican father, Augustin Antomattei, from New York City, was a serviceman in the U.S. Army. His African-American mother, Dorothy Antomattei, maiden name Sims, from Waco, Texas, was a homemaker. Upon reaching adulthood, Marc enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, where on July 31st, 2003, he arrived in the greater Tokyo area as a serviceman. After being honorably discharged in February 2006, Antomattei remained in Japan. He currently works as a professional DJ, freelance graphic designer, writer, and teacher. Stay in touch with Marc Antomattei by friending him on these various social sites. So I have a listing of myself on all social media platforms that I use, and my email address if you want to mail me any questions about this book here. This book is supported by the Gentleman's Club and Gentleman's Club Whiskey. Follow them on social media, and I put the links here. Very beautiful picture, one of my favorites. My friend Maywin had taken this of me. I think I gave him a credit in the beginning. I hope I did. I better have given him a credit on the copyright page. Photograph of Marc Antomattei, page 176 by Maywin Pradeep. Yeah, so I gave my best friend a credit for giving me this photograph, even though he used my camera to do it. Thank you very much, Maywin. Just the final image of the book. A mountain range that overlooks the Hakushu Distillery. Nice black and white picture that I have there. And then I wrote an epilogue. I might read this epilogue since I have a little bit of time left. The epilogue says, I humble myself. Thank you all for your support. This book was both a passion project and me seizing an opportunity. At the same time, I have put in the work and submitted much time and money into the craft we call tasting reviews. If I had lived in the UK, this book could have easily been 50 scotches, or in America, 50 bourbons. I consider the 50 recommendations I selected for this book to be whiskeys for real people. Most are within reach to find, within reason to buy, and that's why I chose them. Despite prices for the more substantial Japanese whiskeys being relatively higher than from other regions of the world, you are generally getting pretty good, if not distinctive whiskeys and wonderful individual experiences. This is the game we pay to play. As Japanese whiskey is the talk of the town, if you want to participate in the conversation and be part of the global trend at the time it's happening, you have to drink it. Ultimately, I'm personally glad I took the journey to go down this road, to become acquainted with this abundance of Japanese whiskeys, gain some insight into them, and come away with understanding and knowledge. It's gratifying. It's not something many can attest to being able to do or have done. It feels good to say your experiences expand beyond the typical usual Hibiki and Yamazaki and assert yourself as an expert. And that was the same sentence. I kind of read that as if there was a period there. That's a comma. Sorry about that. I would like to tell you that this is just the start of our journey together. I plan to write more in this genre, and I hope that as a reader, you'd be willing to join me again. I think we are all ready to graduate to the next level together. Hopefully, I can make my future works more prominent than the first. With your support, of course, Kampai. And that marks the end of the book, page 180. Super beautiful book. I thank you guys for joining me and taking a look at this book page by page with me. I hope it entices you to go out and buy this, as I'm really eager for you to read it. That way we can talk about it together as friends, and you can give me your opinions on these whiskeys, as well as I can tell you why I either like them or dislike them. Beautiful book here. Anyways, gentlemen, again, I thank you for joining me. I'm very humbled that you had given your time to stay with me this long. Salute to you wherever you may be out in the world. Make sure that you drink responsibly. And as always, gentlemen, keep it classy.